Hey horror fans, welcome back to another video on the Terror Talk channel where I give commentary on creepy stories and conspiracy theories. The music you hear I composed myself. If you're struggling financially like a lot of people are, check the pinned comment after watching. I have something that will help you out a lot. Now, let's get into it and have some fun.
This is important context for what I'm about to tell you, so I'm going to start here. I've always been a little suspicious of my mom's past. Suspicious isn't exactly the right word, but I can't think of a better one. She was born in Mexico and spent her childhood there before moving to the States alone to pursue an undergrad degree. The rest is history. She found work, met my dad, and has lived in America ever since. I don't really know a lot about her life before America, and there's a part of me that thinks that's by design. She avoids talking about her past entirely and dismisses any questions about it with a joke or by changing the subject.
Do you have anyone like that in your family that dismisses their past? For me, not really. I pretty much know my parents' past and their history. There's nothing really shady about it. But let me know if you have any creepy experiences or stories related to your family or your family history because I love hearing about that kind of stuff.
Growing up, my dad always told me that it was because she had some childhood trauma that was better left undiscussed. And I believed that for the longest time. I mean, why wouldn't I? But as I grew older, I started getting more and more curious and would often marvel at how skilled my mom was at dodging those kinds of questions at family gatherings and whatnot. Here's what I do know. She lived in a border town somewhere in northern Mexico along the Texas border. It doesn't have the best reputation being a border town and all. The closest I've ever gotten to knowing anything about her parents is a joke that she told a few times when I was younger. She would laugh that her dad's side of the family were the politicians and her mom's side were the crooks, but she was never able to tell which was which. I never read into it as anything beyond a cynical political joke, but as I grew older, I started wondering whether there was more truth to that statement than I had originally thought. Her dad worked for the government in some capacity, and she never spoke about her mother. Not once. The only other piece of information I have is a name. I'm not going to write it out, so I'm just going to call him R. One night when I was around 10 or 11, I woke up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom. As I was walking past our living room, I heard my mom speaking in a quiet voice. I didn't understand Spanish, but she repeated R's name multiple times, the way someone talking about someone would, as opposed to someone speaking directly to someone. All the lights in there were off, so I couldn't actually see her, but I could hear her. Even though I knew it was just mom, my young self was still a little scared of the dark, so I instinctively flipped the light switch on. She didn't scream or even react to the light. It was like she was anticipating that I'd be there.
There's something pretty shady about her mom, isn't there? I mean, for her not to mention her mom even once, like that's pretty weird. And to know so little about her mom in general, like there's definitely something very shady about her past for sure.
Instead, she immediately hung up the phone and glared at me with a look I had never seen from her. She told me to go back to bed, and I did. And that's it. That's basically all I know about my mother's past. A joke, her dad's very vague occupation, and the name R. What I'm about to tell you happened almost a year ago to date, and it's been on my mind a lot recently. I'm from Arizona, lived there my whole life. I was a year removed from graduating college, and I was driving through the desert on my way to meet up with one of my old college friends. It was a really long drive. I'm talking road trip hours, and I was tired of listening to music. I'm not a podcast guy, so I was low key cycling through my contacts, calling up all my friends and whatever girls I happened to be talking to. Eventually, I decided to call my mom. We're both really into soccer, so we were talking about the upcoming Champions League fixtures and how exciting the matchups were. She's got some serious knowledge on the sport, so the two of us can talk soccer forever. Out of nowhere, I saw two pickup trucks blocking the road up ahead. It didn't look like a car accident, so I wasn't sure what I was looking at. I was worried that someone might need help or something, so I slowed down as I approached. My mom was still on the phone, but I hadn't let her know what was happening. I stopped my car and sat there, wondering if it would be a good idea to get out. Before I could do anything, three men sprang out from the two cars, all holding guns. I froze up and realized there was another car quickly approaching mine from behind. I was
Whenever you see cars like this, suspiciously out in the desert, like, don't stop. Don't stop to see if everything's okay because it's not. And it's almost always a trap, I feel. And maybe I'm just paranoid, but it's never good to try to help someone out in the middle of nowhere. Like, I know I don't sound like a good Samaritan saying that, but these types of situations never end well. And I can't remember if I implied this person as a her or a he. I guess he's a he now. I'm not entirely sure on that. I think they said it's a guy at one point, but either way, I didn't mean to call him a her, not to offend anyone or the original creator of the story. But either way, don't ever stop for anyone out in the middle of nowhere. That's just a bad idea.
unarmed, so compliance was really my only choice at that point. One of the men tapped his gun on my door, motioning for me to get out. The other two stood a little further back. I put my hands up and slowly got out of my car. By that point, the car behind me had fully caught up and was parked a little ways away. The man barked a few commands in Spanish, but I didn't understand what they were saying. I consider my inability to speak Spanish one of my biggest failures in life, especially as a Mexican American. And in that moment, not being able to at least communicate with my assailants, I wanted to die. It didn't take a translator to know what they wanted me to do, though. Before I knew it, my phone, keys, wallet, and other personal belongings were in their possession, and it looked like I was going to be stranded in a barren desert with no viable escape.
That would be terrible, wouldn't it? To be stranded in the desert like that and being robbed point blank. But even if he could speak Spanish, I don't think that would have made much of a difference because there's not much that they could have said that would have changed their mind in the first place. So, yeah, it is not great that they didn't even know the language in the first place, but I don't think that would have made a difference in the long run.
One of the men got into my truck, and that's when things took a turn. I realized I hadn't hung up the phone with my mom, and since my truck was still running, she was still on the line. I watched through my driver's side window as the man reached his finger toward the screen, as if to hang up, only to pull it back, like he had changed his mind. I kept watching, and it seemed like he was listening. I instantly connected the dots. My mom must have been speaking to him. Eventually, I saw his lips start moving and realized they were having a full on conversation in there. I obviously couldn't hear anything because the windows and doors were closed, but I knew they were speaking Spanish. I swear on my life, I'm 90% sure he repeated R's name a few times, like my mom had said it, and he was making sure he heard it correctly. At some point, the other guys must have realized what was going on, because they stopped guarding me and approached the car. The guy inside rolled the window down and stared at me as he spoke to the other two men. After he finished talking, all three of them turned and stared at me, as if sizing me up. The conversation didn't last long after that. They hung up the phone and walked back over to me. They handed me all my stuff back, including my car keys. The only thing they took was the cash in my wallet. One of the men looked at me, smiled, and in a thick accent said, "Tax," as he did it. I had never been more happy to lose all my cash in my life. As I drove away, all three cars, including the one that had been behind me, started speeding off into the desert, away from the road. My plan was to try memorizing their license plates, but none of the cars had any. I was still in shock. After a few minutes of driving, I called my mother back and demanded an explanation. She told me that she had simply threatened to call the police on them, as she was tracking my location and knew exactly where I was. I told her that was obviously BS, and insisted she tell me what they had really been talking about. She was adamant about her story, though, and told me most of the Spanish was just her pleading her case. Even though I didn't believe her story, there was nothing I could do but accept it. I asked her to call the police for me, and she said she would. Eventually, we ended the call, and I drove the rest of the way in complete silence. In all honesty, I blocked that experience out of my mind for as long as I could, but over time, I just couldn't anymore. I'm becoming more and more sure that my mom had some kind of tie to a Mexican gang or a cartel growing up. And even scarier, maybe that tie didn't end when she left Mexico. She knows I'm not stupid, so I don't know how much longer she expects to keep this charade up. I feel like I should just straight up ask her, but I'm really worried about what kind of tension that might create. Or worse, what kind of world I might be getting myself into should she tell me the truth.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy if their mom was involved in some kind of Mexican gang or drug cartel. And I know there's a lot of scary things in the world, but I think a Mexican drug cartel is one of the scariest because they are some violent people, man. They are exceedingly violent people. And I would rather be dead than get involved or mixed up in one because that would just be an awful life to get into. Absolutely awful. And I feel like I would rather be dead. And I'm not exaggerating that because, man, if you haven't seen Breaking Bad, then you need to watch that because you'll know exactly what I'm talking about if you've seen that show Breaking Bad, because there's that Mexican cartel stuff in that show, and it is bad stuff. So I thought this was a creepy story, and I hope you enjoyed my commentary and the music, and be sure to check out my money saving opportunity below. And the one last thought that I wanted to give on this story is that it's probably better that they don't know what their mom was involved in, because if they get sucked into that life, that would be pretty bad. So if I was that person, I would just leave it alone. But that's just me. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next video.